Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we really try to unpack complex stories, pull out those key insights you can use.
And today we're looking at something pretty fascinating. A story of, well, maybe one of the biggest tech comebacks we've seen recently.
Exactly. Let's go back. Think late 2022, November 30th, to be precise.
Right. That was the day ChatGPT just landed. Exploded, really.
It felt like the entire tech world just stopped.
Yeah.
And for Google, it seemed like, the ground literally shifted under their feet.
Oh, completely. The immediate narrative almost everywhere was that Google was in serious trouble. Real trouble.
You had this, $2 trillion giant built entirely on information dominance, and suddenly it looked vulnerable, shaken.
Yeah, and we started seeing reports, right? Their search traffic, which had never stopped growing, suddenly hit a plateau, stagnated.
And then there was Apple, their biggest partner, arguably, so looking like they were maybe creating some distance.
It definitely seemed that way. Subtle signals, but noticeable ones.
And the noise around all this.
Yeah.
It was incredible. So much criticism, so public, so loud.
People were saying Google was finished, search was dead. Usual hyperbole, maybe, but it felt real then.
But here's the interesting part, the core of our deep dive today. Amidst all that chaos, all the panic, the predictions of doom, there was Sundar Pichai.
Alphabet's CEO. And his reaction, or maybe lack of reaction, was striking. He was just calm, quiet, composed.
Right. No angry tweets, no defensive interviews rushed out, nothing like that. Just this very steady, almost understated presence.
Which was such a contrast to the storm raging around Google. And it raised the big question we want to explore. How did he do it?
How did this leader, who operates so quietly, manage to navigate this colossal company away from what looked like, honestly, a potential collapse?
It's a masterclass in a certain kind of leadership, isn't it? Especially today, when, being loud often gets rewarded.
Totally. And that's our mission for you today. We're going to unpack Sundar Pichai's strategy, a CEO who doesn't really court the spotlight, doesn't make these huge, bold claims.
Yet he runs Alphabet, Google's parent. Over $2 trillion in value as of, June 2025? One of the most powerful companies on Earth.
So this isn't just a tech story. It's about leadership under extreme pressure. Strategic resilience.
And why now? Because that ChatGPT moment, it wasn't just another app launch. It fundamentally changed how people looked for information.
Yeah, we went from typing search terms into Google.
To asking questions. Big questions, complex ones, personal ones, directly to an AI.
And that hit Google right where it lived. It challenged their whole model, their 2 decades of just owning information retrieval.
Absolutely. It was a foundational shift.
So that's what we're digging into, step by step. How did Pichai fight back? What were the moves, the internal changes?
And crucially, what can you take away from this? What lessons are there from a CEO who leads more like a chess grandmaster than, say, a frontman for a rock band?
Our goal is to give you that shortcut, the deep understanding of this really pivotal moment in tech, hopefully with some surprising insights and genuinely useful takeaways.
Getting you that context, those aha moments, without you having to sift through everything yourself, understanding how they navigated the crisis.
Okay, let's dive in. Section 1. The initial tremors. When AI shook Google's foundation. November 30th, 2022. You mentioned it. ChatGPT arrives.
And it wasn't a slow burn, it was instant. Overnight, the internet was just buzzing. People were, captivated, addicted even.
It felt different, didn't it? Not just another clever tool.
No, it felt like a paradigm shift. How we interact with machines, how we get information.
And the growth figures were just staggering. 1 million users in 5 days. That's insane.
And then 100 million in just 2 months. Think about that scaling.
UBS called it, back in April 23, the fastest growing consumer app in history, period.
It wasn't just a hit product, it was a genuine phenomenon. But the real impact was deeper. It changed behavior.
Right. People stopped just typing keywords.
They started asking full sentences, complex thoughts, weird, wonderful questions that for 20 years you'd have just thrown at Google.
But now, this chatbot was giving coherent, contextual answers. Directly. No clicking required.
And that had immediate consequences. Similar web data showed Google's global search traffic just stalled. Q2 2023. First time in over a decade.
And for Google, growth wasn't just expected, it was fundamental. So to stall, that felt like a body blow, right to the core.
By late 2023, the shift was undeniable. You saw students using it for homework help instead of searching, programmers debugging code with it, bypassing Stack Overflow.
Even complex shopping decisions, best phone under $500, good camera, long battery, clean UI. People were asking the AI, not just Googling reviews.
Which directly threatened Google's bread and butter understanding and monetizing user intent. That was the whole game.
And the data kept coming. Pew Research, February 2024, found that 41% of Gen Z in the US were trying AI tools first before Google for info.
And for developers, for students, that number jumped over 60%, a massive shift.
So while Google was still working on its own big AI model, Gemini, which was still in beta,
ChatGPT wasn't standing still. It kept evolving, adding plugins, browsing, memory, voice. It became this really formidable competitor very quickly.
it felt like they were setting the pace, didn't it?
It certainly looked that way from the outside. The public perception was definitely that OpenAI had the momentum.
Okay, so ChatGPT is one shockwave,
Mm-hmm.
but then came what you called the gut punch.
Yeah.
April 2025, the Apple leak.
Yeah, Bloomberg reported on internal Apple analytics, and it showed Safari search volume, mostly Google, right, down nearly 8.4% year over year.
Why? Because users were just using the AI assistants built into iOS more, skipping Safari search.
And what was really telling was Apple's reaction, or lack thereof. They didn't deny it.
In fact, an anonymous Apple exec told the Financial Times something quite blunt.
They basically said, search as we know it is changing. Voice first, AI first. People want answers, not 10 blue links. That was the quote, more or less.
Wow, coming from Apple, that's huge. A direct challenge to Google's whole premise.
And think about the stakes. Google was still making, nearly $200 billion a year from search ads alone around then. February 2025 numbers.
It's almost unimaginable money.
So this wasn't just about losing market share. It was about disintermediation, that horrible buzzword, but it means people bypassing Google entirely.
The middleman getting cut out. Google was the middleman for the internet.
Exactly. And that threat, that uncertainty, started hitting Alphabet's stock price. Hard.
Right, you mentioned the valuation dance. Peaked over $2.1 trillion in early 2025.
Then dipped sharply, down below $1.9 trillion by June 2025. Lost over $230 billion in value.
And not because of a scandal or a market crash. Just uncertainty, fear about the future.
The questions were swirling. Is this it for Google? Can a chatbot really take down this empire? Was Pichai just not seeing it? Asleep at the wheel, as the critics love to say.
The tech podcasts, Reddit threads. Calls for big changes, even for him to go. The pressure was immense.
And through all of that, Pichai remained quiet. No public fights, no defensive posture. Just silence.
Which, in itself, was a strategy. It set the stage for this quiet comeback we're talking about.
He let the noise happen and focused internally on the response.
Okay, so that sets the scene, the pressure, the doubts. Let's move into how he responded. The strategic response. Pichai's AI-first counterattack.
Right. So while everyone else was debating Google's obituary, Pichai was deep into executing a plan. But not with flashy announcements. It was much more deliberate.
And it wasn't a new plan, fundamentally. You mentioned he'd been talking AI first since 2016.
Exactly. This wasn't a panic reaction. For him, AI first wasn't just a slogan. By 2023, it was the absolute core principle. He'd been laying groundwork for years.
And that groundwork allowed for some big moves, like merging Google Brain and DeepMind.
A huge structural change. Bringing those two AI powerhouses together into Google DeepMind, led by Demis Hassabis.
And their mission.
Build Gemini, a next-gen AI model designed from the ground up to not just match, but eventually beat GPT-4. That was the ambition.
So Gemini launches December 2023, but quietly.
Yeah, the initial marketing was almost like a rebrand of their existing chatbot, Bard. But internally, it was way more significant, an architectural reboot. Meaning Gemini wasn't just text. It was built from day one to handle multiple types of data text, images, code, audio, multimodal natively.
And the goal wasn't just another chatbot product.
No, the goal was to power everything. Search, Gmail, Docs, ads, Android, YouTube, deep fundamental integration.
And while OpenAI was making all the noise, Google did something else quietly in early 2024.
They launched Gemini Advanced, the paid tier, $19.99 a month, no huge fanfare.
But it started finding an audience.
It did. Professionals using Google Workspace, developers, researchers may be frustrated with OpenAI's API limits. It slowly built a solid user base under the radar.
It reflects Pichai's mantra, doesn't it? Best product wins, not loudest hype wins.
Precisely. Resisting that urge for the big, splashy launch before it was truly ready. Focusing on the tech and the integration. It was a gamble, in a way. Could patience win?
Which leads us to May 2025. Google I/O. They finally unveiled the big gun. AI overviews.
And crucially, this wasn't a separate thing. It wasn't Google Chatbot. It was inside Google Search.
Right. Gemini-powered summaries and answers appearing right at the top of the results page, above the old blue links.
And this was strategically brilliant because it enhanced search, it didn't replace it, and critically,
It kept the ad.
it preserved the ad layer. That was the masterstroke. Addressing the huge fear, how do you do AI without killing the $108 billion ad business, Pichai found a way. Integrate without destroying.
So not just a chatbot competitor, but this idea of Gemini omnipresent.
That was the internal philosophy. Don't just build another ChatGPT, make Gemini everywhere.
And by mid-2025, it was. Gmail, Meet, Docs, Sheets, Android, Chrome, YouTube Studio, all getting Gemini features.
And the results, while not always shouted from the rooftops, were starting to look pretty solid.
Like AI overviews reaching 1.5 billion users across 180 countries by June 2025.
Yep, and internal data showing user engagement on search actually increasing by over 12% for early adopters.
Plus boosts in workspace usage, especially in places like India, Brazil. Chrome retention up too.
Even advertisers who you'd think would be nervous started seeing positive signs, like a 5% bump in performance for those contextual ads within the AI overviews.
It wasn't cannibalizing. It was enhancing in some cases.
And maybe the biggest shift was internal, that cultural alignment you mentioned.
Right, the search purists versus the AI futurists.
They started coming together under this idea that search wasn't ending, it was evolving. And many credited Pichai's calm leadership for that cohesion.
Giving teams space, avoiding blame, focusing on user needs, winning with product, not panic, making silence powerful.
He was the steady hand when everything else felt like chaos. And while OpenAI owned the headlines, Google was quietly rebuilding, integrating, focusing on its core strengths.
Which brings us to that incredibly delicate balance, the tightrope walk, AI innovation versus revenue protection.
Yeah, because by mid-2025, AI wasn't just a feature. It was clearly becoming the next layer of the internet. But for Google, that created this huge internal tension, almost invisible, but deeply felt.
I can picture it. On one side, the AI visionaries.
Yeah.
The engineers, researchers saying, unleash Gemini, full power, no ads, pure speed, just like ChatGPT users love.
Driven by possibility, pushing the tech to its absolute limit, forget the business model for a second.
And on the other side, the business guardians. The people acutely aware of that $198.6 billion ad revenue number, $162 billion just from search.
Their job was to protect the core. Don't break the machine that pays for everything. Risking that was unthinkable.
So Chai's walking this razor's edge. Reinvent search, but don't kill the golden goose.
Exactly. And AI overviews were designed precisely for that tightrope walk. Evolution, not revolution.
Launched fully in May 2025 at I/O. Summaries at the top, but only for some searches initially, giving answers without needing 10 clicks.
But always guided by Pichai's internal directive. AI enhances the experience, but it must preserve the ecosystem.
So how did they implement that? First, this controlled rollout.
Right. Unlike, say, Bing just throwing Copilot in everywhere or ChatGPT's rapid plug-in experiments, Google went slow, measured.
AI overviews only showed up for certain types of queries at first. How-tos, definitions, comparisons.
Exactly. Started small. Specific categories. The goal was, as they apparently said internally, test deeply, learn quietly.
Let the system learn, let users adapt, let advertisers adjust.
And by Q2 2025, it was still only on about 17% of global searches, according to StatCounter. Deliberate pacing.
So advertisers didn't panic. Their ads weren't just gone.
No, they were repositioned. That new ad experience layer within the overviews meant contextual ads, sponsored answers, shopping results could appear right there, integrated.
And the numbers held up.
Surprisingly well, early beta reports showed things like click-through rates on AI-enhanced shopping queries actually increasing by nearly 5%. Overall, ad visibility on mobile up slightly too. No collapse in revenue per query.
It proved the tightrope could be walked. AI and ads could coexist, maybe even help each other.
Then there was the second part. Dual modes. Classic versus contextual.
Ah, so the system was smart enough to know when to show an AI overview.
Basically, yes.
Huh.
They built this quiet, dual-engine system. If you searched for something clearly commercial, like best hotels in Tokyo or cheap flights.
Google showed you the classic results page, with all the usual ad slots prominent.
Exactly. Preserved those high-value ad surfaces. But if your query was more informational, exploratory, how to reduce jet lag, history of tea.
Then AI overviews kicked in, letting Gemini provide the detailed answer.
Right. It let AI shine where it was most useful, protected ads where they mattered most, and avoided that feeling of AI being everywhere, which some users had pushed back on with other tools.
Smart. And the third piece was the internal culture. AI with guardrails.
This was crucial. Google had published AI principles way back in 2018. Pichai insisted Gemini's rollout stuck to them. Accuracy, responsible monetization, user trust.
And they built tools to monitor it. This overview watchdog.
Yeah, a real-time internal dashboard tracking accuracy via human reviewers, the aid organic balance, flagging any misinformation. If something failed the checks, it didn't launch. Period.
That discipline seems important, especially when OpenAI was having those issues with GPT-4 hallucinations around the same time, May-June 2025.
It made a difference. Google's overviews maintain that high 97.4% factual accuracy rate in English, according to audits. And people noticed.
The press, regulators, Wall Street, they saw the careful approach.
It built confidence, which leads to the outcome, that market cap stabilizing, holding that $1.87 trillion to $2 trillion range by June 2025.
It hadn't crashed. The fear had subsided.
Yeah.
Pichai's steady hand was seen as an asset.
Definitely. Morgan Stanley's report summed it up. Quiet, profitable, and winning, praising that surgical balance between disruption and defense.
They said Google was uniquely positioned to monetize AI at internet scale because they hadn't panicked.
Pichai understood something vital. True innovation isn't just about building the new. It's about carefully preserving the valuable parts of the old while you do it.
Okay, so they stabilized search. But the challenge was bigger, especially with Apple. Let's talk Google's platform play in the Apple context.
Right, because that April 2025 leak about Safari search declining, even if the number, 8.4%, wasn't catastrophic on its own.
The symbolism was huge. Google pays Apple billions a year to be the default, and Apple users were starting to bypass them for integrated AI.
And Apple wasn't exactly hiding their intentions. Their WWDC comments, the iOS betas showing ChatGPT summaries and Safari suggestions, it all pointed towards Apple building its own AI path, potentially cutting Google out.
The relationship felt strained, publicly at least.
Very. The perception was definitely that Apple was distancing itself.
And Pichai's response? Again, silence, no public complaints.
No. Instead, he executed this incredibly deft countermove, reframing the whole narrative around Google's role.
First move, repositioning Google as a platform, not a product.
Exactly. A subtle but crucial internal and external messaging shift. Google isn't just a search engine anymore. It's an AI operating layer, foundational intelligence.
You started hearing new language from them.
Yeah, at I.O., in press releases. Things like Gemini enhances the entire user journey, building for moments, not just clicks, moving beyond the search box.
Why was that important?
Because boxing Google into just search invited constant comparisons, made them seem potentially obsolete. By broadening the definition to an AI platform, Pichai expanded the battlefield.
And backed it up by embedding Gemini everywhere by mid-2025. Gmail, Docs, Sheets, YouTube, Android, Chrome. It was becoming ubiquitous.
Making it indispensable in ways that went far beyond a simple search query.
Okay, but what about Apple? How do you fight back there? Here comes the twist. Google was coming to iPhones too.
This was clever. While Apple seemed to be pushing Google search away, Google quietly negotiated to bring Gemini features to iOS, but not through Safari.
Ow.
Through their own apps, the Google app, Gmail, YouTube, apps millions of iPhone users already had installed and used daily.
And they positioned Gemini within those apps.
As a neutral assistant, helping you summarize emails in Gmail, do voice search with AI overviews in the Google app, tag content in YouTube.
And Apple couldn't really block that.
Not easily. Google wasn't replacing Siri, it was just making its own apps on Apple's platform smarter. Enhancing the experience inside apps Apple didn't fully control.
That's subtle infiltration. Not fighting the platform war head-on, but embedding Google into the ecosystem war.
Precisely. A very strategic end run around the main point of conflict.
And the third part of this was managing perception, winning the media without loud noise.
While competitors faced controversies, AI hallucinations, regulatory heat, public spats, Google focused on playing the long game on reputation.
They highlighted Gemini's performance wins, like beating GPT-4 Turbo in multilingual tasks on benchmarks.
They published updated AI ethics principles, emphasizing transparency, safety, refusal frameworks, projecting responsibility.
And it worked. The media narrative shifted.
Gradually, yes. You started seeing those headlines praising Pichai's calm hand, his measured rollout. Investor sentiment improved. The stock recovered significantly from its low point.
The narrative changed from Google is losing to Google's consistency is winning.
Which all comes back to Pichai's core philosophy: influence without noise. It wasn't just about the tech, it was his leadership style.
He played for trust, not for hype, believing that if AI is the future, then trust is the currency of influence.
So while Apple distanced, Pichai infiltrated. He expanded Google's role. He redefined search through product usage, not press releases. Quietly, strategically, effectively.
Which leads us to the results. By summer 2025, the narrative wasn't just stable, it was positive. Results in resurgence, restoring Google's empire.
The numbers started telling the story. That market cap rebound, closing back above $2 trillion by June 30th, 2025.
A clear signal of restored investor confidence.
Absolutely. And analysts confirmed it. Morgan Stanley saying Alphabet weathered the AI wave better than peers, praising the measured, scalable, revenue protective approach.
Even the information, often critical, conceded that Pichai's long game had secured Alphabet's throne.
And Gemini itself had hit major milestones. It wasn't playing catch-up anymore.
Over 6.3 million paying subscribers for Gemini Advanced, AI overviews reaching 1.5 billion users, hundreds of thousands of developers using the API, integrations with major platforms like Canva, Notion, Salesforce.
And significant usage within Google's own products, Docs, Gmail handling a quarter of daily queries with AI assistants.
Plus that crucial accuracy lead, especially in non-English context, hitting 97.4%. The critics who called it a rushed clone went quiet.
They had to. The performance was undeniable.
And the biggest surprise for many? The ad machine. It didn't break.
It didn't even sputter. Q2 filings showed search ad revenue holding steady, an incredible $162.8 billion annualized. Click-through rates on AI queries up. Mobile ad engagement up.
Google proved AI could actually enhance ads, not just destroy them. A huge win.
Which all fed back into Pichai's reputation. No longer seen as maybe too slow or too nice.
Now studied. Leading without noise. The Pichai playbook at business schools. Axios calling him most underestimated CEO of the decade.
Because he focused on execution, not hype. He didn't need massive drama to achieve massive results.
And through it all, Google's core mission just evolved.
Yeah.
Still organizing the world's information.
But now also completing your documents, summarizing your meetings, helping with homework, drafting emails, balancing spreadsheets. It became woven into the fabric of digital life.
The substrate, as you put it.
That was the genius. Others built tools, he integrated ecosystems, others hyped, he executed, others fought publicly, he won quietly.
The battle wasn't just against ChatGPT or Apple. It was against irrelevance. And Pichai won by staying calm, focused, and letting the products and the numbers do the talking.
A quiet comeback indeed.
So wrapping this all up, we've gone through the storm, the strategy, the results. What's the big takeaway here for you listening? What can we learn from this story?
Well, I think it's a powerful counter-narrative, isn't it? In tech, we often hear move fast and break things.
That disrupt everything.
But Pichai showed a different way. Move with intention. Preserve what matters. That core business, that user trust. It's a lesson in navigating high-stakes change without, burning the house down.
And remember the initial perception. Google's done, search is dead, Apple's leaving.
The noise was deafening. But Pichai didn't react emotionally. He reacted strategically, calculated.
What didn't he do? He didn't try to out-hype OpenAI. He didn't scrap Google search. He didn't gamble the whole company on a flashy pivot.
What did he trust? Product execution, long-term focus, unifying his teams, rolling out AI overviews carefully, protecting the ad model, reframing Google as that essential AI platform.
It really highlights his leadership style as a kind of superpower.
I think so. In a world obsessed with noise and outrage, his composure, his quiet focus under pressure, that proved incredibly effective. It's not a weakness, it's a strength.
So the deeper truth, maybe, for all of us, in any field,
is that you don't have to be the loudest to be powerful. You don't need chaos to drive change. You don't need to tear everything down to build something better.
sometimes the best strategy is just quiet resilience, outlasting the storm with focus and conviction.
So if you're leading a team, building something new, making decisions in this noisy world, remember that. Panic isn't leadership. Hype isn't strategy. Composure can be your greatest asset.
If this deep dive gave you something to think about, maybe a different perspective on leadership or just navigating pressure, we hope you'll take a moment.
Think about how it applies to you. Maybe leading that next meeting with more intention, resisting the urge to react instantly, stepping back to see the whole board.
Or maybe just trusting your own quiet strength a bit more.
If Sundar Pichai could steer Google through all that without shouting, maybe you don't need to shout either.
If this resonated, let us know. Leave a comment, share your thoughts. And if you think these kinds of stories matter, well, You know what to do.
Until next time, stay thoughtful, stay grounded.
And lead with profound conviction.